Hey everybody, my name's Jenna Nilo. I am the Director of Marketing and Outreach with Illinois Digital Educators Alliance. I thought I was calling it the old name. Illinois Digital Educators Alliance. And today I'd like to thank you all for joining us and welcome Peter Adams, who's the Head of Education with News Literacy Project. I actually came across News Literacy Project in some research when I was doing my ISTE certification, and kind of really fell in love with the organization, so wanted to bring them to you in the event that you weren't aware of them, because I had not been personally. So today, Peter's going to talk to us about digital verification to spark news literacy learning. So I'm going to let him start in just a minute, but before I do so, I just want to go over a few housekeeping items. So first and foremost, you should all be muted. You should have come in muted, and it looks like most of you are. So try and keep yourself muted throughout the presentation so that we don't have any background noise. As soon as I'm done talking, I'm going to mute myself so that my dog doesn't start going nuts in the background. But what we're going to do is, if you do have any questions, please go ahead and put them into the chat window, the Zoom group chat, and I will be monitoring that back channel throughout the presentation, and I will interrupt Peter when it's appropriate and ask those questions whenever he takes a breath or changes the topic or whatever, and make sure that we get those questions asked. We will also have some time at the end for a few Q&A, so if you have anything bigger than a quick question, why don't you hang on to that till the end, and we'll do it then. At the end of the presentation, I'm also going to be popping into that group chat window a link for you to earn your professional development credit for today's webinar. So that link will be available, will be good, open until midnight tonight. At midnight, we'll be closing down that link. So when that link comes up, why don't you just click on it right away and sign up for those PDH hours and get that credit going. Then tomorrow, I will be sending out to everybody who registered for today's webinar a recording of the webinar, as well as any resources that Peter wants you guys to have after today. So without further ado, I am going to turn things over to Peter. So again, Peter Adams, Head of Education for News Literacy Project. He unfortunately is having some technical difficulties, so you're not going to see Peter. You are going to, however, hear him, and you're going to see his slides. So he's going to be the wizard behind the curtain today. So Peter, how about I turn things over to you?
Great, thank you, Jenna. Sorry again for the visual and for the late start, for the lack of visual rather, and the late start, but thank you all for joining me this afternoon, if you're here in the Central Time Zone. My name is Peter Adams. I run the education team at the News Literacy Project. You can learn more about NLP on our website, but basically we are a nonpartisan education nonprofit that tries to help educators teach students how to navigate today's information landscape, which I think, as you all know, is getting more and more complex with every passing day, and never more real than in an upcoming election year. You can learn more about NLP on our website and find some resources at newslit.org, and I will describe some of those resources at the end. But I want to just go ahead and dive in. Something that I sort of use as a top when I'm speaking with educators is to really make this point that young people actually have a right to news literacy education, or they have a right to learn how to evaluate information online. It's changing, as I mentioned, extremely rapidly. But here's kind of why. Information is the very stuff of civic engagement. So it's the foundation on which students build their understanding of the world, of the issues and policies that matter to them and their families and their community. It's what makes democracy work. And they're inheriting the largest and most complex information landscape in human history. There's lots of advantages and opportunities in today's online environment, but there are also a lot of challenges. And they didn't build it, we did. So it's sort of, they didn't ask for this, but this is what they have to work with. And then, therefore not preparing them to do this is actually, in my conception, fundamentally unfair, right? It's actually disempowering for students civically to not know how to evaluate information, to be vulnerable to misinformation and things like that. So that gives you some of the rationale for what I'm going to talk about here. This tweet and video is an example of a doctored video. That banner that says Greenpeace and makes Trump Tower in Las Vegas read Trump betrayed and murdered the Kurdish people is fabricated. That's actually a computer generated piece of imagery by the person who tweeted this. He used to tweet under a handle Paul Lee Tix, which was kind of a joke for politics. But he has used this video before getting suspended by Twitter. He did it again after Trump withdrew troops who were fighting alongside the Kurds recently. After the climate strike protests, rumors like this emerged. Some of you may have seen this exact image with claims that it was some of the rumors claimed this was in Australia. And the claim is that this is the mess that climate strike protesters left behind. So how hypocritical is that? But this was actually in London on April 20th after a marijuana legalization event for so-called 420 Day. The 10 years challenge, you might have remembered, was a meme online where people would post a picture of themselves 10 years prior and post a picture of themselves today. And the people would, in their comments, all their friends who they went to high school with would tell them how fabulous they look, and it felt good, and they got lots of likes and lots of dopamine. This was repurposed by a climate activist online who got massive engagement with this tweet, except it was dishonest. That these photos were taken just 2 years apart, not 10 years apart, and one was taken on the South Pole in 2016 and one was taken on the North Pole in 2018. So they're not even the same location. They appear to show a melting iceberg, but it does not. This is not a baby bunny that was tweeted by this baby animals account. That's actually a toy. But it got lots of engagement online, 3.7 thousand likes and over 1,000 retweets. And these kinds of accounts tweet amazing pictures of nature, very cute animal pictures, sometimes amazing history pictures, and they drum up huge followings. You can see this account has 1.3 million followers. And the reason they do this is so that they can monetize that following in some way. So one of the things about today's information environment is that if you have eyeballs, you can convert that into revenue. So there's a whole business model around tweeting and sharing and posting dishonest things that people will engage with and follow you to see if you can trick them. There's also more nefarious stuff like this. This was a racist hashtag campaign that launched in the immediate aftermath of Hurricane Harvey. It's kind of born on a racist message board called 4chan, where a group of people decided to fabricate quote unquote evidence, digital evidence of looting, which is also a racial dog whistle term. And they used this hashtag Harvey Loot Crew to pretend like they were people, specifically African Americans in the Houston area, looting after Harvey, but that of course was not happening. It was just a fabrication. This was a picture taken from Etsy and just tweeted out to say that someone stole it. This image has been online since 2011, has nothing to do with Harvey. So they were engaging in that kind of activity and getting some uptake with that. And people thought that things were happening on the ground in Houston that weren't. The women in the top of this meme and the top image in this meme actually didn't wear shirts that said "Make America White Again." They wore shirts that said "Make America Great Again," but they were doctored. This tweet looks to be from Congresswoman Rashida Tlaib from Michigan. Americans have spent decades raping and pillaging my people. But if you take a look at the profile, you can see that some things are off. It's not a verified account. Very few tweets, very few followers. Very recently joined Twitter in January 2019. That's actually after she was elected. So not her authentic account. This is a fake. This is an imposter account. But if you put her imposter account next to her verified account, you'll notice that the handles appear to be exactly the same. The imposter account looks to have her exact Twitter handle, which shouldn't be possible. Does anybody have an idea in the chat how someone might have done that? Spoofed her handle to the naked eye to look like Rashida Tlaib's authentic handle? if you have access to chat. I've got it up here. Oop. Yeah, exactly. So the imposter account used a capital I instead of a lowercase l for the last name, and Twitter, in Twitter's native font, those two characters look the same, but they read differently in the Unicode kind of behind the character. So they spoofed Talib's account, and then that fake tweet, images of that fake tweet, even though Twitter suspended that fake account, images of that tweet still circulate like this. So it's very dicey and tricky for people to walk back. And of course, you don't have to create a fake account. You don't have to doctor an image to have something go viral. Here is just a text-based claim typed out and posted to Facebook. And of course, if your status updates on Facebook are short enough, Facebook, as of maybe a year and a half ago, started turning those into kind of a colorful meme that makes them more engaging and more shareable. This is an entirely false claim, but it got echoed across Facebook in the exact same language, just copy paste virality. And then it made the jump over to Twitter. And so you still see this claim circulate, and the ubiquity of it, it takes on a kind of what's called the illusory truth effect. If you see something enough times, it starts to feel like there's something there, something actual or something fact-based there when there isn't. So that's a real risk in today's information environment as well. And it's also evidence in this case of some kind of coordinated information campaign. So maybe a partisan group that is sharing this talking point and encouraging other people to copy and post it and share it, or more nefarious actors doing the same thing. So I want to sort of raise the question, how can we help students? What's a concrete set of skills that we can teach them and concrete tools that we can introduce to them to help them make their way through this kind of stuff and debunk it? And I'm gonna try to touch on, I'm gonna move fast, partially because we got a late start, through about 6 or 7 skills and accompanying tools that you can use. And then I want to show you at the end how you can put these together to create your own digital verification sequences that are really engaging for students, really gets them hooked on first solving a digital verification challenge, and then you can easily pivot into talking about the issue or the political subject or the policy or the politician in question. So I think that these kinds of activities make a great side door into more substantive discussions about current events. So the first skill I want to emphasize is something most of you probably know and do on a regular basis, but your students may not, something called lateral reading. So when students fact check something like this, they may drill down on who posted this, look at the person. If this were on a web page, they might look at the about section of that web page. But if you do a quick lateral search, just by opening a second tab in your browser, hitting Control-T very quickly, and just search for the claim, and just do a simple lateral search, you'll see very quickly we get a Snopes link, a PolitiFact link, 2 PolitiFact links, a factcheck.org link, and others. And so we can then click into those links and look for the explanation. And you might remind students that, good fact checkers, like good journalists, don't ask you to trust them. They show you why you should. So if you clicked into that Snopes link or that PolitiFact link, they would tell you and link to the source material and the evidence to debunk that false claim. So it's not false because Snopes says it's false because of the evidence that they present. So we can give them some related skills and concepts to lateral reading. As I mentioned, a lot of students don't know shortcuts on the keyboard. Control-T opens a new tab. That should be sort of an instant habit when they want to search for something. Exercising some click restraint. I'll talk about that a little bit later, but not clicking on the very first thing, but maybe the best link. In this case, the best links were at the top. I'm also recognizing the difference between a standards-based environment and a user-generated environment. So Facebook is a user-generated environment. I didn't know the man who had posted that claim. I have no idea who he is. I have no idea where that claim came from. He didn't source it. So that's a user-generated environment. I have to operate differently and think differently when I'm in that kind of environment versus a standards-based environment. Doesn't mean that everything from a standards-based source is never has errors, but it does mean that there are checks. There's a process in place to check things and make sure they're accurate before they're published. And then finally, trying to figure out where something came from. I'm going to try to demonstrate that here with some other examples, or going upstream to the source, or answering those questions of provenance. So that's lateral reading. Very essential, may seem obvious to us, but a lot of students are sort of missing that habit to read laterally. The second skill I wanted to talk about is something that we call critical observation. And really no fancy tools needed here, just your own eyes and rational mind. There's an organization called First Draft that does trainings for journalists in this area, and they have something called the First Draft Observation Challenge, which if you Google that, you'll come up with the link for it very quickly. It's, again, intended to train journalists, but I think it has a great use case in the classroom. So again, in the chat, if those of you who can get to the chat and use it here, just using your eyes, tell me the kinds of observation clues and cues, the kind of visual cues you might use to answer the question here. The question they've given us is name the country. And so hopefully you can see this well enough on the webinar. It's big on my screen, and I hope it is for you as well. Maybe you can zoom, or just think out loud with me and tell me what kinds of things could we look at to try to determine where this is, what the country is. Okay, so great. So Jody says the clothing, the way people are dressed. So it's cold, right? So there are some parts of the world where it doesn't get that cold. So we could eliminate those. There's a Star of David on the sheet or the banner in the very front, and the word Gaza. But I'm not sure it ever gets that cold in the Gaza Strip. So I don't think this is in Palestine or in Israel. The language on posters is an excellent clue. You can see there's two in the background. Does anybody recognize the language that's on the two posters at the left, top left? And also, by the way, the language that's on the sheet. Yeah, it's French. And there's one more clue I think that's important to note here, which is the Western European architecture in the background, right? So we have Western European architecture, we have French, we have people in coats that sort of rules out this being in the Middle East for the most part. And so we can conclude that this is in France, right? So that's the right answer there. Let's try one more from First Draft. And again, think out loud, what kinds of things could you look at? No lateral searching, no reverse image search, which we'll talk about in a bit, just your eyes and your brain. What could clue us into what city this is in? How could we figure that out? Okay, so there's signs, there are license plates. So if those two license plates that we can see match, that's a strong signal that we're in that state. Two out-of-state plates from the same out-of-state place next to each other in a given moment would be unlikely. What about the signs are you looking at? So I see Mandarin. Does that mean that I'm maybe in a city in China? So the number of signs and the language. So we're definitely in an urban environment. I see some English, I see some Mandarin. Yes, it looks like a big city in a Chinatown area of a big city. The street signs are in English. That's a very good observation. There's one more thing we can look at on the signs that will solve this for us and tell us what city it's in. If you look, yeah, the phone numbers, the area code of the phone numbers, there's 212 area codes on at least 3 signs that we can see, or that I can see. And that puts us in New York City. 4 signs. Yes, exactly. New York City. So what at first may seem like an impenetrable photo, like how could I possibly know where this is? If you learn to see images critically, can become apparent. And this should be just a habit of mind of students. Visual misinformation is so common. Taking things out of context is so common. That having that skill set is really helpful and can also be the basis for the next step. So sometimes you combine observation with lateral search. And so here's a kind of checklist you can use. We talked about architecture and landscape and clothing. You can look at weather, you can look at text, business names, and phone numbers are gold because you can Google those. Google street names, especially intersections, are perfect. will get you where you need to be to confirm where you are. Signs, things on the sides of buses and taxis, and names of businesses and license plates are all very helpful. And you can actually compose these challenges for your students. I think these observation challenges make great bell ringers. Who can get this first? Who can figure out where it is? Students can use their phones or their Chromebooks to do some lateral searching if you want to make it more complex, or you could just have the answer waiting for them in the image themselves. So just using critical observation, if we return to this example from that racist hashtag campaign after Hurricane Harvey, just observationally, why couldn't this have been after Hurricane Harvey, which took place in August in Houston? We can rule it out right away. The coats, there's no way people were dressed like that in a Houston summer. Here's a picture I took in my neighborhood. Again, I can make these myself on vacation or as I travel or in my neighborhood, and have students try to geolocate things or figure out where they are. So we want students to be able to see something like this, but you know, when they apply their critical observation lens, to see all sorts of potential clues and cues there. And we have the name of a business here that, as I mentioned, is a very strong signal for location if I combine it with a lateral search. So if I now just Google Chicago Dance Supply, I can get to that very quickly. You can also create, you know, images, again, about an issue. Say you wanted to talk about the issue that was being protested at this location on this day. You could create an observation challenge that is your bell ringer, and then you could start to answer questions about why people are there and what they're protesting. This, by the way, may look like Kansas because there's a sign that says Maple Hill, Kansas in the front, but it's actually, if we look at the flag and do some lateral searching, this one gets kind of fun. There are only two flags that are mainly red with some white in the center. And so that's an easy lateral search. We can compare the Arkansas State Capitol and the Tennessee State Capitol to that image and verify that location. So there are lots of fun things you can do. It does not have to be a viral rumor to be your starting point to teach these skills, although that's, you know, a big reason why we want to teach this to students. So the third skill I want to introduce is something called reverse image search. Have any of you done reverse image searching? You're comfortable with it? You know how it works? Typically there's a chunk of folks in every group I talk to who know what they are, who know how to do them. Yeah. And doing them on mobile is important. I'm not going to get to that today, but I'll show you on desktop. Basically, a reverse image search is just like doing a text-based search on Google, but you're searching for an image. Here is the site for Google reverse image search. It's at images.google.com, and there's a camera icon. And if you select that, click on that camera icon, you can do an image search, reverse image search, one of two ways. You can paste an image URL, or you can upload an image. Every image on the internet has a URL. So here I'm going to show you how to take this climate strike rumor. I'm going to copy the image. Oops, sorry. If you're in Chrome, sorry, let me back that up so I know what I'm showing you here. So you can, as I mentioned, paste an image URL or upload an image. If you're using Chrome, you can also just right-click the image and select Search Google for image, and that will do a reverse image search for you in one step. And so here you can see right away, I start to get links about this being a hoax, but what Google has done here is to search for that image. It's not searching for any search terms, any text as search terms. It's searching for that pixel pattern, that digital image, as its search term. So it's going out and finding other instances of that exact same image. And from there, it's just a matter of finding where that came from, finding a standard space source that's going to credit it. If I want to get all the way back to the source, I can try to do that as well. Google image search is not the only one. There's a site called tineye.com that works basically the same way. You can right-click on an image and copy its URL or its location, or you can save that image and upload it. Yandex.com is another one. It's a Russian search engine. It's actually very good. And then there are some great Chrome extensions or other browser extensions. InVid Fake Video News Debunker is available in several browsers. And what it does is add an option to your right-click menu that lets you do a reverse image search very quickly out of your right-click menu like this. And you can see in the graphic, I can choose between Google's reverse image search, Baidu, Yandex, TinEye, Bing. I can just search for images on Reddit. And there are other extensions you can use. TinEye's got one. RevEye is a very popular one as well. So teaching students how to search the web for an image is super important. That's maybe one of the most important things I think we can teach them. It's interesting to ask students, as you know, so-called digital natives, how many of them know how to do a reverse image search or know that that's possible. And surprisingly few, in my experience, no, maybe 10, 15, 20% of students understand that they can do that. But it's a very powerful tool. Now, sometimes when you search something like a meme, if I do a reverse image search for this particular meme, all I get are more instances of that meme. So you can see here, Google has found that image, but since the image itself is text on top of an image, it went out and found me other examples of this meme, which in this case doesn't help me figure out, you know, who these people are and why they're there, or if it has anything to do with the US from this partisan account. But if I snip out a piece of the picture, so if I take a partial screenshot and I save that to my hard drive, then I can get somewhere with it. So sometimes you have to sort of snip out a piece of the picture and do a reverse image search to help you get where you're going and find out where that came from. In this instance, the Daily Mail is not the most, not the highest quality news source. It's a British tabloid that is very often sensational and not entirely reliable, but it does have a credit and it does tell us, you know, where this is. This is a Greek refugee camp. If we drill down on sources like that and do some lateral searching, it credited the photo to the AP. I can get to some other places where I can find out more information. And even if I go to this website, fanac.com, which I really don't recognize or know, now I get even more information. I have the name of the photographer. So sometimes clicking around on websites we don't recognize can get us information that will lead us to more credible sources. So students have to continue to, again, to kind of go quote unquote upstream to try to figure out where this came from. So now I have a date. I know where the people allegedly came from Turkey, but that's according to a website I don't really recognize. So now I need to continue searching and push through and figure out exactly what the situation is here, when this happened, where it happened, and I can probably go straight to the AP's photo site to do that. Is that all clear? Skills 1 through 3. So we talked about lateral searching as just a key skill. Critical observation, and then reverse image search. And I think you can start to see how those 3 skills can work together at different times. What may start as a critical observation can lead you to do a lateral search, which could turn up an image that you might need to reverse search to keep going. Any questions at this stage? Let's just take a pause. I know we're a little over halfway through. Great. All right, I will press on. The 4th skill that I want to talk about is something called geolocation. So sometimes it's necessary to try to figure out where something is. And again, First Draft has a great resource just to teach basic geolocation. The most basic tool for geolocation is Google Street View. And so in First Draft's geolocation challenge, if you click on the picture, you jump into this location in Google Street View. So the prompt was to type out the last word in this mural. So find out how this mural ends and type that word in the blank. So we're going to jump into Google Street View and we can click and move around. Move down to the end of the street, turn the corner, and find that last word, infinitos, the last word of the mural. And that would be the answer here. If we wanted to move on and figure out when that mural was painted, we can click on the date in the upper left corner and look at the different dates on which Google captured this street. May 2012, November 2013, the mural is there. February 2014, the mural's still there. It's still there in August 2017, but by November 2018, it's been painted over. That kind of work is necessary because if someone, say, posts a picture in this location in Spain and with the mural behind them and says, well, I took this picture yesterday, we know that that mural was painted over by November 2018, a year ago. And so that is not an accurate statement. So sometimes geolocation becomes necessary. I'll show you an example of a couple of examples about how to weave in geolocation again a bit later. Sorry for the car alarm outside. The fifth skill I want to talk about is web archivers. These are pretty simple. Many of you have probably used them. These are web-based tools that let you save a URL. So what appears at a given web address, whether it's a tweet or a Facebook post or a website, at a given on a given date at a given time. So if you copy a URL and you head over to archive.is or maybe archive.org/web, which is the Internet Archive's Wayback Machine, you can actually save a copy of a web page as it appears at the moment you save it. And so this becomes important if, say, a politician tweets something problematic, if a public figure tweets something inaccurate that they might delete a few minutes later, you can save a copy of it. If a news outlet has a problematic headline, everybody you know, can screenshot that, but you can also archive it, and the website as it appears will be saved as a picture in the archive, and then it will give you a link that you can share, and that's a stable link. So if a website is changed or deleted, you will have a stable URL that you can share. The Wayback Machine from the Internet Archive also has a Chrome extension that will automatically tell you if there's an archived version of a page you're looking at. So I'm going to show you what it looks like to archive something. This is a tweet from Hoaxeye. He's a fact checker, and he regularly combs Twitter for engagement bait accounts like History Lovers Club. Again, one of those accounts that tries to get a big following so that they can monetize it. And I'm going to try to get to that History Lovers Club tweet and archive that. If I first get to the tweet itself and then highlight the URL, copy it, and then I'm going to go to archive.is, paste that in and save it. And this is what it looks like when you're saving a copy of a problematic or an inaccurate tweet or something you want a stable link to. And it's going to go get all the pieces of the page of that particular tweet, which has its own URL, and then save a copy of that. And now I have a URL at the top, archive.is / capital S, lowercase m, 1, capital R, lowercase s. That URL at the very top of my browser is a stable link that I can then use, and it will not change, even if History Lovers Club deletes this tweet or if Twitter suspends their account. This is also useful for trying to get to a story that if you don't want to click on it, but you would like to see it. So here's a quote unquote satirical news site called TrumpBetrayed.us, or Trump Betrayed Us. It's run by a liberal troll and his group who try to get conservatives outraged online, really kind of counterproductive to the national conversation. But if I right-click that link, I can copy the address, and then I can paste that into the archive, and then I can see it. It's also a great way to share links with students if you don't want them to go to that website, or you don't want them or you want to share a link to something that is maybe blocked by your firewall. You can copy the URL, archive it, and share the archived link with them. So web archivers also let you look up archived snapshots. So if you're looking for a tweet that's been deleted, you can check the archive to see if it's there. Here's an example. The governor of Texas, Greg Abbott, tweeted this quote purporting to be from Winston Churchill. It's actually not a Winston Churchill quote, and so he deleted it. So if you go to that URL now, you get a message to say that that page doesn't exist. that particular status is no longer there. But if we go and search the archive and put in the URL that you see there, I can actually take the beginning of this URL and then just add an asterisk. It will pull up every archived tweet from that account, from Greg Abbott's account. And so you can see there were 46 different URLs that people have archived from Greg Abbott. And I'm looking for the one, that has that quote from him. So that's a helpful tool for students. They can search what other people have archived. And it also kind of drives home the fact that if they see something problematic, if they see an example of misinformation, if they see what they suspect is a propaganda campaign, they can document it, they can archive it so that others can find it if they're doing research on that. That becomes very helpful. So well, the last thing I want to talk about, and then I'm going to show you a few examples of how to sort of put these skills together into particular challenges, is something called domain registration. So many of you probably know that when you buy a URL or you buy a web address, you first of all have to make sure it's available, and then you have to enter some information to do that. So anybody who's ever built a website or bought a URL has probably been through this. It's not a lot of information, but some basic information. And that is stored by an organization called ICANN. And then there are lots of ways to search that registry. And so GoDaddy, for example, has a search on that WHOIS database, or the ICANN registry database. So if I want to find out, for example, who registered that website that we were just looking at, the Trump.betray or TrumpBetrayed.us or Trump Betrayed Us, that liberal troll page, and I want to see who registered that domain, all I have to do is go to any WHOIS lookup portal. I'm using GoDaddy's here in the video, and type in the URL and then see what the results are. And if I scroll down, I can see that someone named Milan Rudamilo, who lives or works on Strada CA Rossetti in Bucharest, and I also have his email down there below, registered that web page. So that's a red flag right there. Someone posting about American politics from Bucharest is something I might want to look into further. We could also send that person an email address and say, why did you create this website? We could also try to geolocate that place and try to see what that street in Bucharest looks like, if that's part of our challenge. So domain registration can become important. There are ways that people can hide their domain registry, so they can pay a third party to obscure their name, their address. But everybody who establishes a website has to enter some name, some address, and some email address to reserve that web address or to renew it. So searching domain registration can be a helpful skill as well. Any questions on the 6 skills that I pressed through? I know I'm moving fast, again, partially because we got a late start, but I want to make sure no one has any questions at this stage before I show you a few examples of ways that you can combine these skills into sequences or challenges that I think really actively teach students how to apply multiple skills. So once you get these in play, you can structure these challenges for students. Okay, so if we go back to this meme, for example, we can build a sequence that teaches them a number of skills. We can start with reverse image search. And as I mentioned, if we reverse image search the meme, we may just get results full of the meme. But if we teach students how to do a partial screenshot and we have them search that, they can then upload that partial screenshot like this and do a successful reverse image search. And Google's algorithm has associated this image with white supremacy, interestingly enough. So it's learned the viral rumor. And if you scroll down, we can see lots of examples, but I'm going to practice some click restraint here. Again, I don't see any URLs on that first page of results that I recognize. Here I have a Snopes link. And again, if I scroll down on the Snopes fact check, I should see an explanation of how Snopes knows that this is false. If we scroll down, we'll see that Snopes has labeled it false. And we continue to scroll, we can see the original image. There's also clues in that image that can help us figure out where it is. They link to it as well. They explain where it was taken, when it was taken, and so on. But if we want to make this the next piece of our challenge, we could apply some critical observation skills here. There are 2 clues in this image that could help us figure out where this was. Does anybody see them? If the next piece of our challenge, now that we've figured out, did the women in the meme wear shirts that said what they said in the meme, we figured out that's not true. So that's not an authentic image. If the next question in our series or our sequence is, where did this happen? Yeah, there's a welcome sign in the back. And the other clue is a watermark down in the bottom left of the photographer, but this is from the Snopes fact check. And if we use a bit of a magnifier, we can blow up that sign in the back, which says welcome to Mobile. So then we engage a little lateral reading, search Trump rally, Mobile, Alabama, and we can find out how many Trump rallies there have been in Mobile since he started running. And we get some dates. There was clearly one in August 2015. There's another one in December 2016. So we're starting to sort of narrow this down. If we add the name of the photographer, Julie Domansky, we can then get to her website, which is, again, going upstream to the source of the image. And we find our attendees, or the women who are pictured there. You can see what they also had on their back. So if you wanted to ask students a question about, what words were on the backs of the women's shirts, that could be another question in your challenge, and one that they could only answer if they got to this page. But here's our original image. We can see now that it was taken at a rally, and we see that the rally was at a place called Ladd Peebles Stadium in Mobile, Alabama. And so, of course, we can now ask students to find Ladd Peebles Stadium in Mobile, Alabama by geolocating it. So I did a search, I clicked on the map, and now I'm going to grab this orange figure from the bottom right, and all the streets that have been indexed by Google Street View light up in blue. And now I'm in Mobile, so I can begin to navigate around the streets, and I want to try to find that scoreboard that was behind them here on the north end of the stadium. So maybe my final question, or my bonus question for really sharp digital sleuths, is what direction were the women facing in the photo? And they were facing south. I can see because I've had to come to the location and look for that scoreboard and figure out exactly where they were. So that's one example. We are actually laying some of these out in an area of our e-learning platform that's called Checkology, and the digital verification area that we've just launched is called the Check Center, and we've collected missions like these, or built missions like these for students. And so if you're a Checkology user and you weren't aware that the Check Center has launched, you can check it out. And if you're interested in that, I will include a link to Checkology in the follow-up email tomorrow. Here's one example, another example of a sequence we've used. Here's a meme about a picture of a border wall. And the claim is that this border wall is on Mexico's southern border with Guatemala, trying to make a political point. Here's a bigger copy of that meme. And if I do a reverse image search, in this case, I actually get results with the image, not just the meme. So there's the meme at the top. But if I scroll down, I can see that I have results with the actual image. There's NBC San Diego, there's the New York Post. And if I click on that New York Post link, I can see that I do get some information. So according to the New York Post caption, and again, now I'm in a standards-based environment. This is a border fence between the US and Mexico, and it's a Getty Images photo. Now let's check Fox News. This is an opinion piece on Fox, but still, I'm in a standards-based environment where there should be a caption, and there is one, and this has more information for us now. So it gives us the date, it gives us the approximate location, so the Anapra area or neighborhood in Ciudad Juarez, and it tells us who took the picture, Chip Somodevilla, for Getty Images in 2007. So now we know a lot more than we knew a minute ago. And now we have the basis to do a lateral search. And if we wanted to make the next question for students geolocation based, we could require them to go to Ciudad Juarez on a map. And now again, you're engaging geography, issues, border issues, immigration issues, depending on what issue you've been discussing or are trying to teach. You can weave this in and integrate these skills throughout your curriculum. And again, I'm looking for an opera, so I found it on the map, and I can jump in, and now I could poke around and try to figure out where exactly that segment of border wall is, and ask questions from there. I can also find the original image and figure out that, look, there are railroad tracks on the other side that look like they're separating. I could go back to the map and try to find that exact area of Anapra if I wanted to. I could even jump into Google Earth using the satellite function and look for those railroad tracks, see if I could figure out where that person might have been standing, where the photographer might have been when he took that image. And it looks like those railroad tracks split off right there. So again, there's lots of places you can go with this. These skills get very complex. Good question from Elizabeth. What age groups would work best? You know, we've seen teachers use this with middle school and high school students fairly successfully. And again, depending on the example and depending on the complexity and the difficulty, you know, I think you can scaffold this down for 7th and 8th graders, and then obviously work it all the way up through high school. I think you can build an observation challenge with upper elementary students as well. And maybe teach them how to do a simple reverse image search. It all depends on, you know, your students and the examples that you use and how easy it is to find the answers. And one final point, just to end with a bit of fun, since a lot of this misinformation is kind of depressing. You don't have to use misinformation to teach this skill set. So here's an example of a TikTok video from Halloween. And so to look at the actual rumor, or the actual TikTok rather, I have no idea where this is. And it may seem like, how could I possibly know where the person on TikTok shot that video of hoverboard Jesus on Halloween? But if we watch again, there are actually clues and engage our critical observation skills. Let's watch again. There are two things that, two details that we can use for a quick lateral search. So if we start here, and as he moves away, we can see that Greener Grass is one of the two movies showing at that movie theater next to him. And he passes a restaurant called Illegal Pete's. And if we do some lateral searching, we can see that Illegal Pete's are only in 3 cities: in Tempe, Arizona, Tucson, Arizona, and in Denver. Oh, sorry, 4 cities and Boulder. If we search for Greener Grass movie times, we can find out that Greener Grass was playing at 1 theater in Denver, and it was playing at 1 theater in Tempe at that time. And so all I have to do is check those 2 locations, and it turns out that this was actually in Tempe. So you can make this work fun for students, and here's the location in Google Street View. You can start with a funny TikTok post. You can start with a picture you took on vacation, or you can start with a photo from a piece of news coverage about an issue that you eventually want to get students engaged in, or you can start with a piece of misinformation and really teach them this vital 21st century skill set that I think is just a survival skill online. Very quickly, other things from NLP. I and my colleague, Susana Gonzalez, write an email newsletter that comes out every Monday during the school year called The Sift. It is free to sign up at our website. You can also check out archives at our website. What it is a kind of rundown of what happened last week that you can use in the classroom this week. So viral rumors, but also debates and conversations about journalism, journalistic standards and ethics, social media, what's going on with Facebook and Twitter banning political ads, Facebook allowing political ads, stories like that. And then we have ideas and suggestions for you to integrate that into the classroom, everything from a bell ringer and a discussion point all the way up to a full day's activity or lesson, or sometimes even project-based stuff. We also have, as I mentioned, an e-learning platform called the Checkology Virtual Classroom that lives at checkology.org. Free to use. If you register for a basic account, you get access to 4 lessons. If you want to go one-to-one and unlock more content and areas for students, we do have a modest licensing fee per student. Again, it's a kind of nonprofit rate. We're just looking to pay for our development and hosting costs there. We try to make it as affordable as possible. We do have some grants available, including some in Chicago. So if you're in Chicago, you could reach out to me and I could figure out a way to get you no-cost licenses for Checkology, thanks to the McCormick Foundation. I mentioned the SIFT. We also do PDs across the country in newsrooms at events called News Lit Camps. We have one coming up tomorrow at the San Francisco Chronicle. We have some in January in Akron, Ohio, Columbia, South Carolina, one in New York City. So, and we will have one in Rockford, Illinois in February here at home. And we will also have one in Chicago this April. So stay tuned if you're interested in possibly attending one of those as well. And you can check out Checkology. Final announcement, we do have a mobile app launching called Informable, which is kind of a game-like app that has 4 game modes and has students try to recognize different types of content online. So if you're interested in that, again, if you follow NLP on social media, we'll be tweeting about it as soon as it launches here in a few days. Again, sorry for the late start and that I threw so much at you so quickly, but I'm going to turn things over to Jenna unless anyone has any closing questions. Oh, Jenna, I think you're still muted. Sorry.
Thank you. So as I was saying, we'll keep an eye on that chat window for just a minute to make sure and see if anybody does have any final questions. It's gotten dark, obviously. I'm like spooky now. But personally, that was fascinating. Thank you so much, Peter. It was as good as I thought it was going to be. So I found that absolutely fascinating. I think everybody else did. I'm going to honestly fall down that rabbit hole and start doing this just on my own because it's fun.
It is, yeah.
So very cool. Thank you so much for that. I did want to let everybody know about our 2 upcoming webinars. So next Wednesday, we have Got STEAM. This is going to be with Sphero EDU. We're going to learn about their new Computer Science Foundations curriculum. So emails went out right at the start of our discussion today with invitations to that. So take a look for that one, or you could just go to bit.ly/Sphero-1120 and register for that. And then we're going to take a week off because of Thanksgiving. So then December 4th is going to be our next one on simple design for your school's social media, and that will be with Class Intercom, one of our partners. So next week, Sphero, a week off, and then the following week will be Class Intercom. Go ahead and register for either of those or any of those. All of our webinars that we do are recorded, and I post them on our website under the Learning tab. There's a Wednesday webinar page, and you can find the recordings there. I will also be sending out the recording of today's webinar to everybody who signed up tomorrow. So I will edit it, get rid of all the superfluous stuff, and then send that out to everybody tomorrow, as including any of those resources that Peter was talking about today that he wants to make sure you guys get a hold of. So keep an eye out for that. And without further ado, unless you guys have other questions, I am going to post the link here for the PDH. So I just sent it out. Go to bit.ly/newslit1113. The link will be available until midnight tonight, as I said earlier. So click that link, go ahead, sign yourself up. I think there's some back and forth emails that happen to get you that credit hour, and we'll get you logged in for that. So go ahead and do that. And then if there are no other questions, I know that we did kick over a little bit in our time, but I do think that was fascinating. So again, Peter, thank you very much. And if you guys don't have anything else, you can log off. Peter, why don't we hang out for just a minute in case anybody does have a question?
Okay. Thank you, everybody.